The rain was falling sideways. Not just dripping, slicing through the air like glass shards. And I was standing in the middle of it, gripping my son's tiny hand so tight it must have hurt. But he didn't flinch. He just looked up at me with those big, trusting eyes. My name is Emily Carter, and if I ever doubted rock bottom had a basement, that night proved otherwise. Behind me, the red taillights of my parents' car blurred into the mist. My father had just shouted from the driver's seat, his voice bitter and sharp. "You're nothing without us, Emily. You always were." Then the tires screeched and they were gone. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. They left me and my 7-year-old son, Aiden, standing by a deserted gas station off a forgotten rural highway in North Carolina. No phone, no wallet, no backup plan. Just the soaked clothes on our backs and a $1.25 vending machine that wouldn't even take soggy dollars. "Mom, are we gonna sleep here?" Aiden asked, his voice trembling but calm, like he was more worried about me than himself. I blinked fast. I couldn't cry. Not in front of him. Not now. "No, baby. We'll figure it out." He nodded, hugging my arm tighter. I could feel his shivering bones through his sweatshirt. What kind of parents do this to their daughter? What kind of grandparents abandon a child like this? I wasn't a criminal. I wasn't an addict. I had just chosen to live life differently. Chosen love over money. Kindness over image. And for that, they said I was dead to them. They told me it was either come home, leave my husband, and stop embarrassing the family, or they'd cut me off for good.
And I didn't beg.
I didn't fold. So here we were. The gas station attendant, a sleepy older man in flannel, opened the door just enough to frown at us. "Ma'am, we're closing up. You can't loiter here overnight." I opened my mouth to plead, but I didn't even have the strength. My teeth chattered. Aiden leaned into me more. The man must have seen the desperation in my eyes because he sighed and said, "Fine. You can sit under the awning out back. Just till morning. But don't make a mess." We sat on the cold pavement, soaked, humiliated, and abandoned. But I wasn't broken. Because I knew something they didn't. They thought I was alone. That without their money, their approval, their connections, I was worthless. What they didn't know was who I married. And when the sound of propellers sliced through the morning sky at dawn, that gas station, that town, and my parents' entire worldview would never be the same again. I barely slept that night. I held Aiden close against me, shielding him from the cold wind that cut through the alley behind the gas station. Every sound made me flinch. Every time a car passed, I hoped and feared it was someone I knew. I hated feeling helpless. But not once did I consider calling them. At sunrise, the clouds cracked just enough to paint the sky in soft amber. Aiden stirred and curled up tighter beside me, his lips dry, his face pale. I was about to shake him gently awake when I heard it. A low thumping in the distance. Rhythmic. Powerful. Familiar. My heart jumped. No way. Not already. I stood and looked past the edge of the building. It was coming from the sky.
Fast. Loud.
Closer now. Then I saw it, the black helicopter, gleaming like an obsidian blade against the sunrise, cutting through the clouds like it owned the sky. The sound drew everyone. The gas station clerk stepped outside, mouth open. A trucker paused with his coffee halfway to his lips. Even the few early commuters in the nearby diner turned their heads. And then it hovered. Right over the lot. The side door swung open, and there he was. Liam Blake. My husband. A man my parents had mocked. Called a nobody. Said he'd never amount to anything. But today, he wore a perfectly tailored navy coat, headset clipped to his jawline, expression sharp and focused. He looked like someone who commanded boardrooms. Someone who made nations take meetings. His eyes scanned the lot, then locked on me. He didn't smile. He nodded. Seconds later, a suited man jumped down from the chopper, rushed toward me with an umbrella and a coat, and wrapped Aiden in warmth. "Ma'am," he said respectfully, "Mr. Blake requests you board immediately." I looked back at the gas station. My parents were there. Of course they were. They'd pulled up minutes earlier, maybe to check if I'd learned my lesson. And now they stood frozen, mouths open, faces pale. I turned back to Aiden. "You ready, baby?" He nodded, eyes wide with awe. We walked to the helicopter together, the wind from the blades whipping our hair like a storm. As I climbed in, I didn't even look back, but I felt their stares. Their power had vanished. Their smug control?
Gone.
And that was just the beginning. Inside the helicopter, everything was warmth, leather, and silence, except for the soft hum of the engine and the buzz of my own heartbeat. Aiden sat beside me, snuggled into the plush seat, wrapped in the cashmere blanket the assistant handed him. His little eyes, sleepy and curious, looked around at the screens and buttons with innocent wonder. Across from us, Liam was watching me. Not just looking, watching. His jaw clenched, like he was holding back 1,000 emotions. His eyes scanned every inch of me like he was trying to determine whether I was hurt or holding it together by a thread. I didn't say a word. Neither did he.
Not yet.
The moment was too full. Then he spoke, softly but clearly, voice raw. "They really did it, didn't they?" I didn't have to ask what he meant. He already knew. I just nodded once. His hand curled into a fist for a second before he reached over, touched my cheek gently, and whispered, "They left you with our son in the rain. Like garbage." My voice cracked. They told me I was nothing without them. He closed his eyes and took a long breath. I knew that breath. That was Liam's "I'm not going to explode in front of my child" breath. "You were everything without them," he finally said. "They just didn't like that you realized it." I blinked, hard, trying to stop the tears from escaping. I didn't want to cry, not now. Not after I'd survived the worst night of my life. But Liam didn't need my tears to understand. He leaned forward and whispered just loud enough for me to hear. "They will never have the power to do that to you again." We landed 20 minutes later on a private helipad overlooking the city skyline. A car, sleek, silent, and waiting, pulled up the moment our feet touched the ground. The driver greeted Liam by name, opened the door for me like I was royalty, and helped Aiden into the back seat. As we drove through the city, I realized I hadn't seen Liam like this in a long time. Focused.
Sharp.
Dangerous in the way only powerful men can be when you've crossed someone they love. "I didn't just come to get you," he said after a moment. "I came to make sure they understood they messed with the wrong woman." I gave him a wary look. "Liam, don't make this ugly." "Oh, sweetheart," he said, eyes narrowing just slightly. "I'm not making anything."
They did.
"I'm just giving them the courtesy of witnessing the fallout." He pulled out his phone and scrolled through something. "Tomorrow's press conference, it's moved to that gas station. We're expanding our company's clean energy division, and I've decided the perfect place to announce our next $10 million development is exactly where your parents left you." My breath caught. "You're kidding." "I want the media to see it. The same pavement they kicked you onto? It's about to have your name on a plaque out front. The Emily Carter Clean Energy Initiative. You're not just my wife, Emily. You're the woman who never broke. And they'll have to watch that." I stared at him in stunned silence. "You're turning my worst night into power?" He smiled for the first time that morning. A real one. Not smug. Not vengeful. Just proud. "Proud of me. I'm just the husband," he said. "You're the headline." That night, after Aiden fell asleep wrapped in soft pillows and cartoons, Liam and I sat on the terrace. I looked out at the stars and asked the question I'd buried all day. What kind of parents abandon their daughter like that? Liam didn't answer right away. Then he said, "The kind who knew you were growing wings and couldn't stand the thought of you flying without them." I felt something break inside me and rebuild at the same time. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was becoming something bigger. And tomorrow, the world and my parents were going to see it. The next morning arrived like a storm with a smile. Bright blue skies, news vans, camera crews, and a carefully coordinated media event transforming that rundown gas station into the epicenter of attention. Banners waved in the breeze. A small outdoor stage had been built overnight, flanked by reporters and executives. The townspeople gathered early, some confused, others whispering rumors, most of them stunned by the sight of Liam Blake, CEO of Blake Innovations, stepping out of a town car in a sharp gray suit with a woman at his side who, to most of them, looked nothing like the soaked, trembling figure they'd seen outside the convenience store yesterday. That woman was me, Emily Carter Blake. Hair sleek, dress tailored, eyes steeled. But inside, my heart was a live wire. Because I saw them. Standing awkwardly near the back, my parents. They'd come in their Sunday best, trying to blend in, but I'd recognize that stiffness anywhere. My dad, James Carter, still held himself like a man who thought the world owed him something. My mother, Linda, wore her pearls like armor. I could see it on their faces, the shock, the confusion, and underneath it, the beginnings of fear. They hadn't expected this. They never expected me. Liam took the stage first. Flashes popped as he began his speech about energy reform, future cities, and local investment. Then came the line he'd warned me about. This initiative wouldn't exist without one person. Someone who knows what it means to be left behind and still lead. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet the woman whose name this project will carry. Emily Carter. Applause erupted. I stepped onto the stage. It felt like walking through fire, but the kind you choose to walk through, knowing what's on the other side. I took the mic, hand steady, voice clear. Yesterday, I was abandoned here by the very people who raised me. They told me I was nothing without them, that I'd regret every decision I'd ever made. There were murmurs. Cameras zoomed in. They thought I'd crawl back, that I'd beg, that I needed their approval to have value. But I didn't come here today to seek revenge. I paused. Let that land. I came to reclaim the space where I was told I was worthless and build something that matters. The crowd was silent. Then came the clapping. Real, loud, human. I looked right at my parents as I continued. I see you standing there. I see your faces. And I want you to hear this. You don't get to be proud of me now. You don't get to smile and pretend you believed in me. You abandoned me. Their faces crumpled, but I didn't stop. You don't owe me an apology. But you do owe my son one. Because he remembers everything. I stepped away from the mic and walked off that stage like it belonged to me. Aiden ran into my arms near the base of the platform, and I knelt to hold him, shielding him from the cameras. Behind us, Liam wrapped his arm around my shoulder, not as the hero of the story, but the man who knew who I really was before the spotlight hit me. And as I stood, hand in my son's, head held high, I finally felt it. Not revenge. Not even vindication. Freedom. Real, earned freedom. I didn't need to destroy my parents. I just needed to outgrow them. And today,
I had.
The press event was over. The stage was dismantled. The crowds faded. But my heartbeat? It still thundered in my chest. I stayed behind longer than the rest. Not because I wanted attention. Not because I wanted to savor the applause. But because I needed a moment to breathe without performing, without proving, without protecting my son or defending my marriage. Just me, standing in the same exact spot I'd been abandoned in, with the same gas station sign above me, the same broken pavement under my heels, and yet nothing about me was the same. That's when I saw them approaching. My parents. They walked slowly, as if each step cost them something. My father still wore that uptight expression he always had when he was about to lie, and my mother kept clutching her purse like it was some kind of lifeline. But their posture, shoulders slumped, eyes uncertain, told me this wasn't a power move. They were coming to face the storm they'd created. I didn't move. Neither did Liam, who stood off to the side with our security detail, watching silently, giving me space, but not out of reach. And Aiden? He was playing on the grass nearby, innocent, joyful, free. Exactly the way a child should be. My father cleared his throat first. Emily. I raised a hand. Don't. He stopped mid-step. My voice didn't shake. You can say what you came to say, but you don't get to rewrite anything. He looked uncomfortable. My mother stepped in. We didn't know. Didn't know what? I snapped. That I was married to a man who would move the sky for me? That I'd survive without your money? That I'd raise your grandson with dignity and not fall apart the moment you shut the door on me? Her lip quivered. We made a mistake. I laughed.
Short. Dry.
You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. You stood in the rain, looked at your daughter, your own flesh and blood, and told her she was nothing. That she was worthless. That she didn't belong. That's not a mistake. That's who you are. My father clenched his jaw. You don't have to speak to us like that. No, I said, stepping closer. But I will. Because the truth is, I'm not the weak little girl who used to shrink under your rules. I'm not the people-pleasing daughter who kept trying to earn your praise like it was oxygen. I'm a woman now. A mother. A wife. And I don't have room in my life for people who only show up when there's a camera pointed at me. They both went quiet. Then, after a long pause, my dad said, You turned out stronger than we thought. I blinked once. My voice dropped.
No, Dad.
I turned out in spite of you. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I looked over at Aiden, who was still playing, oblivious. I softened, just slightly. I'll make sure Aiden knows where he came from. But he won't ever know you the way I did. He won't be raised to believe love has to be earned or that family means control. He'll be loved freely.
Completely.
Without fear. My mother was crying now, but I didn't comfort her, because it wasn't my job to. We're leaving, I said, turning away. And I'm not coming back. They stood there in stunned silence as Liam walked over, placed his hand gently on the small of my back, and kissed the side of my head. I didn't look back again. That night, we flew back to our home in Manhattan, a place that used to feel too big, too luxurious, too far from where I came from.
But now?
Now it just felt like mine. Later, after Aiden was asleep, I stood on the balcony with Liam. He poured me a glass of wine, but I barely touched it. I was watching the skyline, those endless blinking lights, all pulsing with movement and promise. And I said quietly, They called me a disappointment. Liam looked over, eyebrows raised slightly. They said I'd fall, that I was reckless, that choosing love over image would ruin me. He slipped an arm around me. They were wrong. I nodded slowly, but I needed them to be wrong. I needed this. Liam didn't respond with some cheesy line.
He didn't need to.
Instead, he looked me straight in the eyes and said the one thing I'd waited my whole life to hear, from someone who meant it. I'm proud of you, Emily. Not for today. For every day you kept walking through the storm and didn't give up. Tears welled in my eyes, but I didn't break. I smiled, slow, fierce, full of something I hadn't felt in years. Not revenge. Not victory.
Peace.
Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't someone else's version of who I should be. I was me. Unapologetic. Unshaken. Unstoppable. And finally, free.
You're not worthy of this family name. The words cracked like thunder through the room, slicing the tense silence into shreds. I blinked, stunned, as my father's voice echoed off the polished walls of my aunt's over-decorated living room. Every pair of eyes at the table turned toward me, some wide with awkward sympathy, most laced with smug delight. You're a failure, my mother added coldly, not even looking at me directly. You don't belong here. Then, applause. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us, where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos? And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us, what would you do in this situation? Be honest. Tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. A few claps at first, then more. My uncles, my aunts, all nodding, smiling, reveling in my public humiliation as though they'd been waiting for this moment. I felt a pulse behind my eyes, but I didn't cry, not in front of them. I stood motionless, barely breathing, My palms were cold. My throat felt like sandpaper. My cousin Allison was smirking behind her wine glass. Uncle Ray leaned over to whisper something in Aunt Denise's ear, both of them chuckling. And still, no one stopped it. Until a single chair scraped backward. My grandfather, William Madden, former state prosecutor, war veteran, man of iron discipline and quiet storms, stood slowly at the far end of the table. The clapping stopped. He didn't say a word right away. He just looked at my father, then my mother. Then finally, he turned his sharp blue gaze on me. "If she's not worthy of this family name," he said, his voice measured and low, "then maybe it's time the family learned the truth." My heart jumped into my throat. What? Truth? My father stiffened. Grandpa reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded paper, aged, creased, yellowed at the edges. He placed it gently on the table. "This is what I've kept hidden for over 20 years. I swore I'd never need it. But clearly, I was wrong." "Dad, what are you talking about?" My mother snapped, her voice high, uneasy now. "You want to call her a failure?" His voice rose an octave, not angry, but charged. "You want to stand here in your comfortable clothes, under your expensive chandelier, sipping wine that she paid for and call her unworthy?" Everyone looked at me now, eyes suddenly confused. "She paid for this?" Aunt Denise asked. "Yes," Grandpa said. "Because your perfect little failure over there has been funding half this family without any of you realizing it." The room froze. I said nothing. Grandpa turned to me. "I know you didn't want them to find out. You wanted to protect the peace. But they lost the right to your silence the moment they applauded your shame." Then he looked back at the table. "Her trust fund? That wasn't a pity safety net. That was hers. Left by my late sister Claire, a former CEO, who chose this girl to carry her legacy. And she has. Quietly. Powerfully." "What trust fund?" my father demanded. "Claire never had children." "Exactly." Grandpa cut in. "So she adopted her." Dead silence. My body turned to ice. "Wait, what the hell are you talking about?" my mother hissed. "You didn't want her. You two made that clear when she was born. So Claire stepped in. Legally. She's not your burden. She's your replacement." Gasps erupted around the room. "She owns part of Claire's company," Grandpa continued. "And she's been paying off your mortgages, funding your kids' tuition, and keeping your family name respected, while you stand here and laugh at her, like children at a schoolyard fight." "No, no, that's not true," Allison muttered, her voice shaking. I finally spoke. "It's true," I said quietly. Every head whipped back toward me. "I've been helping all of you, because I thought maybe, just maybe one day, you'd see me for who I really was. Not the girl you looked down on, not the maid you joked about, but someone who earned her place." "You lied to us," my father muttered. "No," I said calmly. "I never lied. I just didn't correct your ignorance." The tension was a live wire. No one moved. No one dared. But I wasn't done. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice steady now. "You can keep your judgments, your smug looks, your applause. I'm done playing the quiet one. I have nothing to prove anymore. You do." My mother opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. "And starting Monday," I added, "the tuition payments, the mortgage aid, the insurance I've been covering for Uncle Ray's third heart surgery, all of it stops. Let's see how much you laugh when you're on your own." Allison's glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. "I hope your pride keeps you warm," I said, picking up my bag. Then I turned to Grandpa. He nodded. Once. And I walked out. But that was just the beginning. I didn't cry on the way out. I didn't even look back. The sharp clicks of my heels across the marble echoed louder than anyone's words ever had. but when the door shut behind me, I stood still for a moment on the porch, breathing in the cold air. My hands were trembling, but not from weakness, from release. For the first time, I'd finally said it. I didn't go home. I went straight to the office. My office. Top floor. Overlooking downtown. Frosted glass doors. A place none of them had ever visited. Not even once. "Miss Madden." Karen, my assistant, greeted me with wide eyes. "You're back early. The board meeting. Reschedule it." She nodded. She could tell something had happened. I stepped into my office and closed the door behind me. Silence. Finally. My heart was still racing. The adrenaline hadn't left me yet. My phone buzzed nonstop. Calls, texts. "Dad, what the hell was that?" "Mom, you embarrassed us in front of everyone." "Uncle Ray, call me back. We need to talk about the tuition." Delete, delete, block. I stared out the window, city lights blinking back at me. They weren't mad because I lied. They were mad because I no longer needed to pretend. That night, I slept for the first time without anxiety knotted in my chest. The next morning, I stepped into the elevator, pressed floor 31, and felt calm. Karen was waiting with coffee. "So, it started, hasn't it?" I smiled faintly. "Yeah, and now it's time to finish it." She slid over a file. "Everything you asked for. Mortgage documents, school fees, account summaries. And this," she tapped a separate folder, "is what we found on your cousin Allison." I opened it. My eyes narrowed. Unpaid credit cards, designer loans, fabricated pay stubs. She's applying for a mortgage, with your letterhead forged. I said nothing for a long moment. "Press charges?" Karen asked. "Not yet." I closed the folder. "We'll wait. The fall hurts more when you don't see it coming." By Thursday, I'd gotten 3 emails, 2 voicemails, and 1 pitiful handwritten letter from Uncle Ray. I didn't reply to any of them, but I did make a few quiet phone calls. One to the private school Allison's kid attended. One to the bank that handled Aunt Denise's refinancing. One to the HR head at the company my brother-in-law worked for, whose job, unbeknownst to him, was entirely under a corporate branch I now controlled. Revenge wasn't loud. It was silent, strategic, and it had only just begun. Saturday morning, a knock on my door. Unexpected. I opened it to see my cousin Allison. She looked nothing like the smug woman who'd smirked behind her wine glass days ago. Her eyes were puffy, her lips dry. She held a folder in her shaking hands. "Can we talk?" she asked, voice small. "Please." I didn't step aside. "About what?" "I didn't know you were all that," she whispered. I laughed. Once. Cold. "All that?" "I didn't mean it like that," she rushed. Everything's falling apart. The loan fell through. The school's asking for fees up front. And they said your company sent a notice." "You forged my signature, Allison," I said quietly. "That's fraud." "I didn't mean to. My mom said you wouldn't care, that you wouldn't even notice." She looked up at me, trembling. "Please don't ruin me. I have a child." I stared at her. "So did I. And you all ruined me anyway." She looked like she might collapse. I paused, then said, "You have 3 days to fix it. Pay the dues, apologize in writing, withdraw the applications, and never use my name again. Or I will press charges." Tears filled her eyes. She nodded quickly. "I will. I swear." I closed the door before I saw her cry. Later that day, I met with my grandfather at a quiet corner cafe downtown. He was already waiting, sipping black coffee like always. "You did well," he said the moment I sat. I didn't feel great about it. "That's what separates you from the rest of them." I looked at him. "Why did you keep that adoption quiet all these years?" "Because Claire asked me to," he said simply. She didn't want the family's poison touching you. She hoped they'd learn to value you. They didn't. I swallowed. So now what? He reached into his coat pocket. Another envelope. What's this? I asked. He slid it across. Her final transfer. Stock shares, property, voting rights. She always intended you to inherit everything. This makes it official. My hands shook as I opened it. It wasn't just inheritance. It was power. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a burden. I felt like the one they should have feared all along. Sunday evening. I was reviewing quarterly reports when my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I ignored it. It rang again. And again. The fourth time, I picked up. Hello? A pause. Then, my mother's voice. Sweetheart, we need to talk. I didn't reply. We didn't mean what we said, she continued, her voice all sugar now. It was a misunderstanding. Your father he was stressed. Stressed, I said quietly. He called me a failure in front of the entire family. You applauded. She exhaled sharply. You know how things get during gatherings. Tension. Pressure. You mean truth. Things got truthful, and you hated that it came from me. There was silence on the line. Then, your father isn't well. He's been having chest pains. It's been a tough few days. You want money? I said bluntly. No, she snapped, then softer. Well, not money exactly. Just a little support. Your brother lost his job, and Denise is behind on her mortgage, and... I cut her off. All the people who called me nothing suddenly need something? Her voice cracked. We didn't know what you were going through. You never cared enough to ask. She sniffled. Please. We're still your family. No, I said. You made that clear when you clapped. And I hung up. That same night, my doorbell rang. I glanced at the security camera. It was my father. I debated not answering, but something inside me wanted to see him try. I opened the door slowly. He looked older than he had just days ago. Shoulders heavy. Eyes red. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, I messed up? Which time? I asked calmly. He stared at me. I thought if I pushed you harder, you'd become stronger. But maybe I was just cruel. I crossed my arms. I was jealous, he admitted, of the way your grandfather looked at you. The way Claire chose you. I felt like you were stealing something that belonged to me. She didn't choose me to hurt you, I said. She chose me because you abandoned me. He nodded. I know. I studied him. Why are you really here? He hesitated. Then, I wanted to say sorry, before it's too late. The silence stretched between us. I don't know if I can forgive you, I whispered. I don't expect you to. He looked down. But I needed you to hear it. Then he turned and walked away. No demands. No anger. Just the quiet weight of a man who'd realized he'd already lost the most valuable thing he ever had. 2 weeks later, I received an invitation. A formal family dinner. At my aunt's house. Again. I nearly tossed it in the trash. But Karen tilted her head when I showed her. You sure you want to ignore it? I'm not interested in another ambush. Maybe. Or maybe they're finally realizing whose table it actually is. Her words sat with me. That Saturday, I walked into the same house I'd stormed out of. But this time, I wasn't the outsider. This time, I owned the house. Literally. Grandpa had transferred the deed into my name last week. Quietly. Strategically. None of them knew. I stepped into the dining room. The same faces turned. Now uneasy. Alert. Nervous. My mother forced a smile. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. Allison looked like she was trying not to breathe. I took the same seat I had before, folded my hands, and waited. The silence was unbearable. Uncle Ray finally broke it. We'd like to apologize. For what? I asked flatly. For not treating you like family, he said. For forgetting what you've done for all of us. My aunt added, we weren't fair. We see that now. My mother stayed silent. So did my father. I leaned forward. You want forgiveness? They nodded. Then you'll stand up. Right now. And apologize out loud. Not in whispers, not with hesitation, the same way you shamed me, in public. Everyone froze. And then, Grandpa stood. I think that's fair, he said, placing a firm hand on my shoulder. If you all meant what you said, prove it. One by one, they rose. Even my father, even my mother. I'm sorry, they all echoed. Some with shame, some with tears. Some just because they feared what would happen if they didn't. And in that moment, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel angry. I felt whole. I accept your apology, I said quietly. But understand this, your access to me, to my time, to my support, is earned now. It's not a right. It never was. No one spoke. I forgive, but I don't forget. As dinner ended and people quietly filtered out, Grandpa walked me to the door. You did what none of them had the courage to, he said. You reclaimed your name, on your terms. I smiled. No, I redefined it. He chuckled. And they'll never forget it. I stepped outside. The night was calm, clear. For the first time in years, I wasn't weighed down by what they thought of me. Because now they knew exactly who I was. Not the failure, not the maid, the heir, the storm, the reckoning they never saw coming.